Hey everyone, this is Robert, and thank you for tuning in to Station Square. I am, as we are just, I'm sitting here and we're just counting down the days for Sonic Revolution. I know that I'm not wearing my Sonic well, but regardless, I have posters behind me, it's probably going to be like a good indicator for how for today's episode is going to be. If you've seen the Sonic Boom posters behind me, I am a huge Sonic fan and love the series since I was a kid. And what better way to celebrate the occasion by having Bill and Sam joining me for today's special episode. Thank you guys for being here, and I'm just really, I'm so jazzed to actually talk about, your career in showbiz, Sonic Boom, and a bunch of other stuff that we'll probably get into for this hour. But yeah, how are you two doing?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to be here and to talk to you.
Yeah.
Doing well, Robert. Thanks for having us on the show.
Yep, anytime. Yeah, I guess as a little bit of an icebreaker just to start us off, you can talk about what you've been up to, like, for the last, few months. It could be, either since the pandemic or what you've been up to as of late this year. Like, we could just get right into your current plans and, yeah, how everything's been for you guys since we've been in, I guess, sort of under quarantine or I don't know what this is anymore. But yeah, like we could just talk about what you're up to at the moment.
Well, right now, I have a couple of animated projects that are in development and waiting to be approved to move forward. I don't know what's going to happen with those right now. I'm hoping at least one of them goes, and they're both more. They're not in the kid space. They're more adult, um, geared toward adults.
Yeah, and most recently, uh, for what I've been up to, I just wrote an issue of Action Comics Superman for DC, and that should be coming out hopefully, I'm guessing later this year, or early next year.
Okay. Yeah, so like I said, there should be plenty to talk about. So I don't want to ask like the generic, how did you get into so and so? But instead, I'm just gonna jump right into, well, basically just was showbiz kind of like always something that you had in mind? Did you have like other like avenues that you were considering about prior to getting your start in the industry?
I'm sorry, I
Like,
missed
did
the
anything
first part
else
of
come?
that. You broke up for a second. I
Oh,
missed the first
sorry.
part of the question.
Was showbiz always something that you had a knack for? Was there like anything else that you were kind of juggling around with, or
I,
was this
I
always
have
something that you
no
want to
other
do?
I have no other marketable skills. I'm lucky that I'm somewhat amusing because I was able to get into show business fairly soon. I went to NYU to study film production, and then I worked in television. And I started as a stand-up comedian, but I worked in television pretty much from that point up until now.
Okay. Because I was also gonna, because I kind of knew that you sort of did like stand up, just to dabble it into it a little bit. Was it something that you really enjoyed doing?
Um, I enjoyed it, but I wasn't as good at it. It wasn't my strength. The writing part was more to my suited more my talents than the performing part. But um,
Yeah.
I was nominated for an Emmy for my Simpson script, and I was on an Emmy panel for the Writers Guild. And Larry Wilmore, the comedian, showrunner, talk show host, was another one of the people on the panel. And there were some other people on the panel: J.J. Abrams, John Wells, some big people, Eric Fry, Emax Fry, and Larry and I really did very well on that panel. And we're leaving, and Larry put his arm around me, and he said, "That stand-up background comes in handy, doesn't it?" And he was right, because we were able to really be very natural and comfortable talking to the audience. So even though I didn't have a long career as a stand-up, I always consider myself having started as a stand-up, and the experience I had was quite helpful in the rest of my career, pitching shows, pitching jokes in writers' rooms. that stand-up background, as Larry said, does come in handy.
Yeah, so comedy writing, you've kind of discovered early on, that was definitely your sweet spot when it comes to,
Yes.
working in the biz.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so after you've done stand up, after you've got your experience doing that, then that's when you started working on a lot of television series, and then
Hmm.
so I know that you've also done live action, so just wanted to get that out of the. I mean, I know that people mainly you've done a lot of animated shows, but you've also done sitcoms, you've done live action. So, was there like a big difference when you're writing for like a live action, working on a live action sitcom, or is there like, are they kind of the same? Like, is there a
I don't
big
find them
difference when it
that
comes to
different.
live action or animation? Yeah.
I don't find them to be that different ultimately. I mean, what you can do is different. It's um animation is similar to one camera shows. They're similar to movies, whereas a three camera show is similar to a play. So the sitcoms I've done are more play like, and the animation, is more of a kind of a style that's more like a feature film. But writing the jokes, breaking the stories is all the same to me anyway.
Yeah. And what is your process of when it comes to storytelling or writing?
My process, that's an interesting question. I mean, you have to figure out what the story is. I like to have a well defined story that I feel is bulletproof so that I can write it. And if changes need to be made in the dialogue or whatever, at least I know the story works. So for me, and when I work with Sam also, we're very good at breaking stories on that whiteboard and making sure all the parts are in place. And then we know from there, you can always write a script.
And a rule that we kind of took from Drawn Together when we were writing on Drawn Together. One of the showrunners of that show uh, made a point of saying that something that I really agree with that we kind of took with us on the rest of our careers so far, which is the premise should make you laugh. Like the story described in a sentence or two should be funny already.
Yeah.
Hmm. Oh yeah, because like speaking as somebody who also writes screenplays and
Mhm.
writes, like for other projects, like if it's something that I think if what I'm trying to say is if it's something that you personally find to be very like it's enjoyable, like you really love writing it and it's something that really speaks to you, then I know that it's something that can definitely work, when it comes to collaborating with other writers and then getting your ideas up on the big screen, like whether it be on television, movie, like anything. Like if it's something that you personally enjoy, then it's going to reflect in the final product.
Yeah,
That's
I
definitely how I
think that
feel.
you should do what you like in these things. Like
Yeah.
you could write, you could make a decision to be mercenary and say, well, this kind of thing is selling. It's not the type of movie I like. It's not the kind of TV show I like, but I'm going to try and write that so I can break into that. And I find that's never the way to go because what you think is funny, the things that make you laugh in a comedy, hopefully are the things that make the audience laugh. And if you're chasing something, you're not being true to yourself, and you won't do the work won't be as good as if you really say, this is what I like, this is what I think is funny, this is what I think is interesting. So I am going to write that, and I hope the audience goes on the ride with me.
Yeah, and from my end, like when it came time to write like some of my episodes, uh, a lot of times I'm a big fan of Family Guy and have been since when it first came out. So like, a lot of times I'll fall back on the idea of, well, if we can't think of something, let's just parody an 80s movie. That'll be funny. Like, which is what happened with the episode Victory, the soccer episode of Sonic Boom, was just me doing Break Into Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah. I mean, like, I know they say that, like, um, good art is borrow, but great art is steal, or at least, I mean, stealing from the best is always is sort of 90% of the time that's kind of the way to go. Like you take influence from something and you're like, maybe I should do this. And then boom, there's an episode.
Yeah. We did that on Drawn Together a lot. We would take 80s movies and we
Mhm.
would write our episodes. By the time it's done, you don't even know that it's the movie anymore because you make so many changes to it because you're doing the Drawn Together characters. It's not the same thing as the movie you originally got the idea from. It becomes so different that it becomes its own thing. But that jumping off point of saying, did you see that movie? I did a show called The PJs with Eddie Murphy, and we wanted to do a barbecue episode. And there was a card on the wall that said barbecue. That's all it said. It said BBQ. And we want to do an episode. We know that this would be an interesting area for the characters. And we couldn't think of it. Then one day I looked up and I said, I looked at the card. I said, what if we did Amadeus, but with barbecue instead of music? And it ended up being the gumbo episode where Thurgood is the king of gumbo in the projects, but Juicy, the little fat kid, has this incredible genius talent for cooking and starts to show up Thurgood, who then decides he has to destroy him. And we basically just did Amadeus. But the ridiculousness of it being gumbo and the ridiculousness of him like trying to sabotage an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old just made it ludicrous and funny instead of serious.
Yeah. So from what I'm gathering already, sometimes with your writing, you kind of take cues from, I don't know, something that happened to you in real life, and then you sit down and wonder, maybe this could make a really good episode.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
for my Simpsons episode that I wrote, I the story was completely different, but the structure of the Simpsons is the first act is completely different than the second two acts. And the last event of the first act throws you into the real story. And we broke a story in the room that was Lisa becomes a Buddhist. And the way we got into it was Bart and Homer destroy the church because they launch a rocket into it. And that first act, all about model rocketry, was something that I did. That my friends and I were into. We used to build these model rockets and launch them. And we used to go to the park. And then eventually we were too lazy to go to the park. We went to the street and I launched one and it went right into the window of my house. And that's essentially what happens at the church in the Simpsons episode. They're doing it, they're doing it, they're doing it. And then they build this giant rocket and they lose control of it. They put that hamster in the cockpit, which when I was a kid, there was actually a rocket that Estes rocket sold that had a clear payload, and they encourage you to put like some kind of animal in it, like more like a bug or a worm, and see what space travel did to it. Although it really only went up a little bit, it wasn't space travel. But we did it. We thought, oh, this is what they're encouraging us to do, and then that all of that stuff from my childhood became the first act of that Simpsons episode.
Yeah, that is very interesting. Because as somebody who also watches Simpsons, I also noticed that the first act mainly it has like a scene or a story that like builds up to the main plot. And you
Mm-hmm.
kind of see that. I know that people say, well, it's kind of disconnected, but honestly, I think it kind of works for whatever story is going to be happening. Like in your case, like,
Yeah.
Homer and Bart end up blowing up the church, and then that's when Lisa becomes a Buddhist. Like that ties into the main plot of the episode.
Yeah.
It's a series of events that leads into a story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see, another example, it's like when you watch something like I don't like say South Park or Family Guy, they also have like I know for a lot of the episodes, there's mainly jokes that are
Mm-hmm.
scattered throughout the episodes, but when you get down to the main content, they really do focus on, having the main story take precedent. I mean, you could tell um, you can have a lot of humor in there. I mean, that's also what The Simpsons really excelled at. Like, they told stories, but they still had a lot of jokes that could keep you entertained, but still they're connected to the plot in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about having these really tight continuity structure for the episodes that you're working on. And it's also better, like, if you've had like a personal experience and you're like, maybe this would really go well with this character, or like for this story. Have something from your personal life and then tell it. I mean, if you want to be like exaggerated or be broad with it, you can, but at the same time, but at the end of the day, like, um whatever stories that you have, I mean, all of us, I feel like we all have stories to share, and I feel like for the medium of medium for television and especially animation, like the possibilities are limitless pretty much, and they're endless with what you can do and the stories that you can tell with these characters.
Right. It's like my favorite episode of Sonic Boom is one that Sam wrote, which is ripped from the pages of real life, was Nutwork. Right, Sam?
Oh yeah, yeah. What specifically do you mean ripped from the pages of real life? Because it was in multiple ways.
Right, right. But that the idea of criticizing the news, and the news not really, the media not really telling the truth, and the all this, all the stuff, the Nestle connection, all that stuff. I think you could talk about how, how all that stuff is our own thing on Sonic Boom, but it's also reflects the world.
Right, and in regards to the idea of like you were bring it back to what you're saying earlier. um Nutwork was a parody of a movie called Network by Sidney Lumet, and by the end of writing the episode, it was completely different than the movie Network. It was the genesis of the idea.
Yeah, and also, um, Eggman is stealing water, and no one believes it except Styx, because the media is focusing on fluff and trivial stuff. Um, and Styx is the only one who discovers it, and she ends up doing her own podcast. She becomes so popular, the media gets rid of their guy and brings her in, and then slowly starts to corrupt her, and then she revolts. And in the end, Eggman does makes a speech that's similar to the what the president of Nestle once said about water, that it's not a basic human right, which is crazy, you know. And so in that story, we were really commenting in a very silly cartoon about something very serious.
Yeah. So in a way, um, when it comes to the characterizations in the show, I feel like I've noticed that for a lot of series, I feel like if you're writing a show, like if you're a producer or if you're one of the showrunners, like typically most of the characters are like, at least some of the characterizations kind of do stem from like, you know, you're really bringing your own personality into the characters. So I noticed that that's definitely is the case for Sonic Boom, where it's like you mentioned, the story about how with the media and the frenzy and with Styx, it's all very believable, and it's definitely something that would be very, very, that's something that is so relevant when you watch the news and when you watch like somebody become a social media influence and then they start almost let it get to their heads and then they start revolting. So that is something that happens all the time. Like it's just so like on point with how toxic, like when it comes to media, when it comes to the news and having these influencers start becoming, and people listen to that person, and it also can lead to bad influences in life. So I think that's how I was interpreting it. So I know that somebody else may have a different interpretation on that, but that's just kind of how I see it when it comes to social media, the news, and just everything going on with, society and the world and everything else.
Yeah.
This is why I don't have social media.
Yeah. Trust me, I really don't blame you. Because in a way, like for social media, it can become like, I noticed that there's like two sides of it. It's great for networking and it's great like, if you're working in the biz and you can have um if you're trying to meet up with your clients or work with your friends and all that stuff. So there's that, and working with other people. Like if you have a project that you're doing, like you can share like, hey, we're looking for da 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 da. So that's great. But on the other hand, people have very strong opinions on stuff. And it's about what being careful about what you say on social media because you just don't know who is watching your profile and a bunch of other stuff that, yeah, it's just not. So there's like, that's like a whole separate can of worms altogether. So there is a good and a bad side when it comes to anything, and social media is no exception. So that's just all I'm gonna say about it.
We did a
Uh,
social media episode of Sonic
yeah.
Boom. I'm remembering now.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's right.
Hmm. Yeah, which one was that?
That's the one where Eggman starts. What was it? What's it called? Some sort of
Oh, right. Yes, he starts his own social
Scrambler. Scrambler.
Yeah.
Scrambler. Nice.
Yes.
Yeah. The author's message: social media is for villains.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was funny where he's and it's all ridiculous things. I think one of the lines is something about um what's a way I can show approval with the least amount of effort? Like having clicking the like button. It's like there's really nothing to do. And we were commenting on that. He's trying to figure out
Mhm.
yeah, we did a lot of stuff that commented on society and how things work, which is a little unusual for a kids show. It was a little more satirical and a little more aware of the world than many shows for that age group. And I'm
Yeah.
really
Yeah,
proud
I'm
of it.
sure. I'm sure children really appreciated the reference to Eggman's Saddam statue being toppled.
Yeah. Yeah. In
Oh, the
fact,
statue. Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
I believe that it was a statue of that was a parody of the Walt Disney statue at Disneyland.
Oh
And then
yeah.
it got pulled down like Saddam Hussein, if I'm correct, right, Sam?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah. Layers upon
So
layers of commentary.
yep. So given that some of your previous, projects have been working on, you've done The Simpsons, you've done Drawn Together PJs, which are all, well, I mean, for The Simpsons is kinda debatable because like kids and adults watch it, but for Drawn Together and PJs is more for, I mean, these shows are more for a grown-up audience. So since you've done work for, give your previous experiences of working on projects that are aiming for a more mature demographic, like, did you find that it was, like when it comes to Sonic Boom and some of the other projects you've done, like, um, was it easy for you to adapt to writing or running a show that is made for a younger audience? I mean, especially since it's based on a franchise that is very large and very like when it comes to Sonic, like you just couldn't get away from the blue blur. I mean,
Yeah.
jumping from Drawn Together to something like Sonic, which is like I really, really hot, like a large franchise. Like, did you find that it was easy to adapt to, like, especially when it comes to writing a show that was already adapted from the video games, and now you're doing a TV show based on the video game Sonic Boom. Like, was it a challenge for you in a way?
Um, well, here's the thing, like the show was supposedly for kids 6 to 11, give or take. And so you can't do sex stuff, you can't do dirty stuff, but it doesn't mean you have to write down to them. It doesn't mean it can't be intelligent. We can't do smart jokes. We didn't worry. I think again in Nutworks, one of the lines is Styx refers to the media corporations as our evil draconian overlords. Now, what other kids show for 11-year-olds is going to use the word draconian? You know, but we never shied away from that. I never said, "Oh, we need to write this down to kids." We need to do what we think is good, what we think is smart, what we think is funny, and the kids will come along with us because there'll be enough stuff for them that if one thing gets past them, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. To me, it's like watching SpongeBob because
Hmm.
there's a lot because you can enjoy it for like, it's colorful. The kids will love, the colorful animation. You can enjoy the characters, but why a lot of people still really love the show and why it still resonates with them to this day. It's that the jokes and the writing are clever, like the characters are very relatable, and you can still have something that can be enjoyed um by adults just as much as you can with the
Yeah.
children. I mean, that's why people like the kids, they still love Looney Tunes, they still love the old Disney shorts. Like you could watch Popeye as a kid and then you still love it as an adult because they're timeless. It's this timeless quality to them, like this charm that you just cannot replicate that is just so endearing. And it can just, and that's why Sonic really works as well because you can enjoy it as a kid, and then it still has such a large following with the adults. I mean, like, there's conventions, we got backpacks, there's merchandise, we got posters, like, behind me, because the appeal of these characters is what's gonna, like, because it's not just the fact that it's not just for Sonic Boom, like you guys did a show, but the character has been around for over 30 years and he's still going strong and he's still run, no pun intended, and people still love Sonic because he I mean, you hear stories about like, oh, I was in a really rough spot and Sonic really got me through some hard times, or he's just a character that I personally can relate to. And it's the character that really has won many generations and is still going to continue for however much longer because there's no sign that Sonic is stopping anytime soon, especially with the movies that just came out.
Right.
And there's the new video game, Frontier, so and comic books, so it's not slowing down anytime soon.
No,
Well, that's one. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
go no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I see. That's
no,
one of
you
the
go.
coolest things to me about Sonic Boom becoming something of a cult hit, like after its
Hmm.
life on television, is that as a kid you watch Sonic Boom and you have a great time, but if you go and revisit it, 5, 7 years later, and you're an adult now, you're gonna have a completely different experience.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
That was our goal, was that there are some shows that you watch in your childhood, and when you get older into your 20s and you're feeling nostalgic, you go back and watch them, and some of them hold up, and some of them you say, how did I ever like this? This is so ridiculous. And I wanted Sonic Boom to be one of the ones where you went back and said, oh, I didn't get that joke before. I didn't understand that before. And so you can watch it and it will be like watching a brand new show because you're seeing all these things that the 8-year-old didn't see, but the 18-year-old sees and the 28-year-old sees even more. And that's what we tried to do, never to write down to kids and make it a silly show. Just make it funny.
Yeah, and I'd be amiss if I didn't mention, like, part of the reason why the show it really caught on to a lot of people was not only was the writing consistently funny, but it was also like the performers and actors that worked on the show, they really were able to like really spice up, what you guys wrote. Like you have
Yes,
the performers either recording together or separately, however, I mean, I know
we
that
did it
most
together.
shows. Yeah,
We did it
together.
together.
So you have the group of actors that are just playing off of each other and just really making the jokes that you guys have in the scripts and making the stories so much better. Like I
Yes,
remember like even Cindy Robinson, Amy wrote an episode on the
yes.
show and it was, like and if there's an extra like special feeling you get when you write an episode and then play one of the main characters in the show. Like that is still to me just a really great, it's a fun little exercise and a fun little experiment
Yeah,
just to get your creative juices flowing.
I like to
Yeah.
have everyone feel like they're a part of it. And,
Oh yeah.
it's not digging
Totally.
a ditch. It should be fun. It doesn't
Yep.
have to be tense and unpleasant as some shows can be. I want it to be I want everyone to enjoy themselves and everyone to feel like that their contribution is valued.
Yep. So, do you have like a list of favorite episodes that you wrote for Sonic Boom? Any other ones that come to mind?
Well, I only actually am a credited writer on the four-parter. Other than that, it
Mm,
was
mm,
my
mm.
job to get everything else organized. And Sam wrote many episodes and also was the editor.
Mm.
He did the animatic editing and final editing with me. And the two of us shaped the humor of the show through that thing, as that part of it, as well as through the writing. But I mean, I like a lot of the episodes. There are only 1 or 2 episodes I dislike, and I'm not going to get into which ones those are. But Sam, what are your episodes that you like?
Oh, I mean, just for sheer absurdity, my favorite might be of mine is probably Victory, just because it's just compounded 80s references upon 80s references, and it's the whole thing's just like ridiculous. I was looking online. I kind of wanted to see them do the dance again that they do at the end of the episode that's based on Captain EO. I went on YouTube and it had 42 million views. To put that in perspective, Who Let the Dogs Out has 42 million views also. So like I mean
Ain't
I'm
that
really
something?
proud of that one. Sorry?
No, I was like, ain't that something?
Yeah, it's like I couldn't believe it. Who would have thought? But that one and probably Nut Work, I would have to say, I think represent what I think is my best work on the show.
Yeah.
And the other
So,
thing is, Sam wrote an episode, Mr. Eggman, where Eggman finds out he's not a doctor, and that's a really smart episode with a lot of interesting stuff and song parodies from weird references. But my favorite part of that episode is the stupidest slapstick part when he's trying to steal the exam, and Orbot and Cubot are helping him doing that Mission Impossible thing where they lower him from the ceiling, but they keep dropping him. When they pull him up, he hits his head on the ceiling instead of going through the hole. And it's this protracted physical comedy scene that's not sophisticated at all. But whenever I watch it, I always laugh out loud at how silly it is.
And we really bolstered that in editing, because the first cut that came back, it wasn't nearly as long. And we in the animatic just added a bunch of drops and hitting his head and he falls down again and made it probably like 4 times longer.
Yeah, because we saw something funny in it and we just wanted to keep going with it and keep playing on it.
there you go. Just keep expanding on the gag and making it funnier.
Yeah, it's that Simpsons thing where
Yep,
Sideshow Bob steps
exactly.
on a rake, and you do it once, it's funny. You do it 4 or 5 times, it's funny. Then it starts to get old, and then you keep doing it, and it gets funny again because of the audacity of
Yes.
the fact that you kept doing it.
And as an
Yeah.
editor, the thing I love about doing jokes like that is it gives you a lot more time to cut from heads and tails of other shots, so you can make the episode snappier by extending a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. Yep. Let me see. Anything else that you want to share? Like, I know there's a couple of projects that you're working on at the moment, but we could just talk about Sonic Revolution for a little bit, since I did mention that
Yeah.
a little earlier. So yeah, we could talk about Revo and any closing thoughts that you guys want
I
to.
love Sonic Revolution. I love meeting the fans. I mean, our show doesn't need the publicity anymore. The show is done. I don't do it to get people interested in the show. I do it because the fans are so great, and everyone there is so nice to meet and nice to talk to. Online sometimes people, can be, unpleasant, and they can attack because they have whatever their thing is, and they want to yell at you. But in person, all the people who come to Sonic Revolution are just so much fun to talk to. I get there in the morning, and the next thing I know, it's over because I'm just having such a good time.
Yeah, I really feel like whenever I'm there, I really feel like these are my people, because while I wasn't like a Sonic fan necessarily going into writing Sonic and editing it, I became a fan of it afterwards. But from my personal experience, I'm that much of a fan of other things too. Like, for example, Back to the Future, I'm that fanatical about, among other
Yes.
things. So yeah, I feel like a kindred spirits with everybody who shows up there. Like, we all love pop culture.
Oh yeah, I could totally see from your background, like your space and everything. I love the Terminator, so I gotta bring that up.
That's my new Terminator 2 Judgment Day arcade machine, actually, that I just got. Yeah, that's a game that I've been playing since my childhood at like Castle Park
Yeah,
and Ultra Zone and stuff like that. So I when it came out, I had to get it. And
yeah.
I also just recently got a Fast and the Furious arcade machine that's on the other side. You can kind of see the foot of it.
Mhm.
on the other side. But yeah, as you can see, I like to waste my money on pop culture as well.
Hey, don't we all? But yeah, this has been a huge pleasure getting to have the both of you on. Do you guys have any closing thoughts before we conclude for today?
Union strong, WGA forever.
Oh, yes.
Yes,
Yes,
the
indeed.
Writers Guild is on strike right now, and we've been picketing, and we support the union, and hopefully we'll be able to get back to work soon.
Oh, yeah, I know it's been crazy what's been going on, but
Yeah,
yeah, that should be like a whole separate episode on its own. But regardless, thank you guys for your time. I
thanks for
really had a
tracking
lot
us
of fun
down.
doing this. Oh, yeah, for sure. Like what? I stopped. I'm kidding. But yeah, it's really great getting to chat with you two. And yeah, if anybody is interested, like come to Sonic Revolution. Bill and Sam will
I
be
look forward
there.
to seeing all of you there.
Yeah, and I'll also be there. And if you like these lovely little posters, you can definitely support the artist and support everybody who runs the con. And
Oh,
it's going to be a lot of fun. So, Sunday, June 11th, 10 to 6. Hope to see you there. And yeah, until then, this is Robert, and you've been watching the Station Square podcast. And until the next time, everyone, um, stay safe and stay healthy. And, you know, punch every day in the face. And um, I don't really have an outro, so I'm just gonna say ta-ta, lovelies.
bye
I'll see you all
everybody.
next time.
Yeah,
Peace.
Bye-bye.
see you at Sonic Revolution.